Welcome to Vintage Vehicle X-Ray. The weirdest luxury car America ever built begins with a machine that should not have worked as well as it did. It was huge, heavy, powered by a giant V8, and sold as a premium personal coupe. Yet it pulled itself down the road through its front wheels. That alone made the Oldsmobile Toronado feel almost impossible in the middle of the 1960s. Americans were used to thinking of big power, big engines, and big luxury as things that belonged with rear-wheel drive. The Toronado quietly ignored that rule. It was dramatic without being flashy, radical without pretending to be a science fiction toy, and refined enough to make its weirdness feel serious. That is why it still matters. The Toronado was not merely strange for the sake of being strange. It was strange because Oldsmobile wanted to prove that Detroit could still surprise people at the highest level of American car making. That made the Toronado important from the moment it arrived. Oldsmobile introduced it for the 1966 model year, and it immediately stood apart in the personal luxury field. General Motors had already found success with the Buick Riviera, and Ford had proven that buyers loved stylish personal coupes. But the Toronado did something no one expected. It became the first U.S.-produced front-wheel drive automobile since the Cord 810 and 812 had disappeared decades earlier. That alone would have made it memorable. But the Toronado was not a tiny engineering experiment. It was a full-size American luxury coupe with real power, real comfort, and real showroom importance. It carried a bold technical idea into a part of the market where buyers expected confidence, not excuses. People are at the center of that confidence. Oldsmobile engineers had been studying front-wheel drive for years, with engineer John Belts playing a central role in bringing the project toward production. Designers under Bill Mitchell's broader General Motors influence shaped the car into something that looked advanced without losing its American authority. Factory workers had to build a machine unlike anything else in the Oldsmobile line. Salesmen suddenly had a new kind of story to tell, one that combined luxury, innovation, and strength in the same breath. Buyers who stepped into a Toronado were not simply buying comfort, they were buying a conversation. Neighbors noticed it, mechanics studied it, journalists wrote about it. A car becomes weird in the best sense when ordinary people feel they need to explain it to one another, and that was very much the Toronado's fate. The design helped create that reaction. The first-generation Toronado looked long, low, and forceful, but it did not wear its novelty like a joke. The nose was clean and thrust forward with a sharp confidence. The body had no decorative fuss that it did not need. The hidden headlights sat behind a smooth front face, and the side profile carried a muscular sweep that made the whole car feel as though it had been pulled into shape by speed. The roofline flowed neatly into the rear deck, and the wheel openings seemed to sit perfectly within the body. It looked expensive, but not soft. It looked futuristic, but not cartoonish. In an era when many luxury cars were happy to be ornate, the Toronado felt almost severe. That restraint made it more striking, not less. The manufacturing story explains why the weirdness was real and not just styling theater. Oldsmobile had been working on front-wheel drive since the late 1950s, and by the time the Toronado approached production, the division had developed a practical way to combine a large displacement V8 with a front-drive transaxle. The key was the unitized power package. which used a version of General Motors' turbo-hydromatic transmission with a special chain drive to send power forward through the front wheels. That solution sounds almost normal now, but in the context of a large American luxury coupe, it was radical. General Motors was not trying to build an economy car with front-wheel drive. It was trying to prove that a powerful, prestigious coupe could use the layout without embarrassment. That required engineering courage, manufacturing commitment, and a willingness to risk real money on an idea many buyers had never considered. There was also a historic moment behind the Toronado's arrival. When the 1966 model appeared, the car world treated it as a genuine event. It won Motor Trend's Car of the Year award, earned the Car Life Award for Engineering Excellence, and even achieved unusual European recognition as a leading finisher in the European Car of the Year competition. Those honors mattered because they showed the Toronado was not only a novelty, it was widely understood as a major technical and design step. Detroit had built a machine that looked bold, felt expensive, and genuinely moved the industry conversation forward. At that moment, the weirdness was not a weakness, it was prestige. In everyday use, the Toronado had an even stranger achievement. It made its unusual engineering feel natural. Buyers were not asked to sit in a tiny experimental pod. They were given a broad, comfortable, luxurious coupe with the sort of space and V8 smoothness expected from an upper-level American car. The benefit of front-wheel drive was not only novelty. It allowed a flat floor and a large, clean interior space, while also giving the car strong traction in poor weather for such a powerful machine. The Toronado could be a highway cruiser, a winter companion, a status symbol, and a personal luxury car all at once. That mattered because weird cars usually ask owners to suffer in some obvious way. The Toronado asked owners to explain it, but it did not ask them to give up comfort. Inside, the car made an equally unusual impression. The dashboard carried that mid-60s General Motors confidence, but the Toronado also gave drivers one of the strangest instrument ideas of its age, the famous slot machine speedometer, where numbers moved behind a fixed horizontal pointer. That detail alone made people feel they were sitting in something different. The controls were grouped sensibly, the seats were broad and rich, and the atmosphere mixed American comfort with a slightly futuristic flavor. You were not stepping into a sports car. You were stepping into a private coupe that wanted you to feel modern. In a market full of familiar luxury cues, that was a powerful kind of difference. The specifications made the whole thing even harder to believe. The first Toronado rode on a wheelbase of 119 inches and used a massive 425 cubic inch rocket V8, making 385 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque. The car weighed around 4,500 pounds in running form, yet contemporary tests still showed strong performance. With 0 to 60 times around the mid-7-second range, and a top speed around 135 miles per hour. Those are not trivial figures. They matter because they prove the Toronado was not a weak experiment. It was a serious American luxury coupe with real pace, real authority, and a drivetrain many people assumed should not have been able to handle such force through the front wheels. Comparison makes the Toronado even easier to understand. Against the Buick Riviera, it looked more technical and less purely elegant. Against the Cadillac Eldorado that followed with a related front drive layout, The Toronado felt like the original act of courage. Against a Ford Thunderbird, it seemed more advanced and more willing to take risks. Even against the old Cord, the Toronado stood apart because it brought front-wheel drive back not as an exotic flourish, but as a realistic production solution in a major General Motors model. That may be the most important comparison of all. The Toronado was not weird because it was impossible to mass produce. It was weird because Oldsmobile managed to mass produce something most people assumed belonged only to dreams or prototypes. There was another reason the Toronado felt so weird in the luxury world. It was not only an engineering novelty, it was a statement that Oldsmobile, of all divisions, could sit at the center of General Motors' innovation. That gave the car a strange social position. Cadillac was supposed to be the ultimate prestige name. Buick had the Riviera. Yet here was Oldsmobile introducing the most daring large coupe in the corporation. Buyers felt that difference. Owning a Toronado did not simply say that you had money. It said that you noticed engineering. It suggested that you wanted the unusual answer, not merely the expensive one. That is a subtle but important distinction. Luxury often depends on inherited status. The Toronado depended on curiosity and confidence. It was a car for someone who liked explaining why it was different and enjoyed the fact that most people had never seen anything quite like it before. It made luxury feel a little less inherited, a little more daring, and more conversational than the American Boulevard Cruiser. The engine story only needs one short explanation here. In simple terms, the Toronado used one of Oldsmobile's great rocket V8s, and that was a large part of why the car felt so convincingly American even while its layout felt revolutionary. The 425 and later 455 engines gave the Toronado deep, effortless torque and the sort of quiet authority luxury buyers expected. The point was not high-rev drama.